Welcome to the Cosmic Cafe show, where the paranormal is normal. My name is Eric Brown, and I'll be your host and server for today's daily special at the cafe. We are brewing up the question of what is causing these crop circles here in Northern California. Recently, down in the central coast of California, a crop circle suddenly showed up in a field. Nobody knew where it came from or who made it. Now, there are a bunch of theories, and I even had my own theory, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Clearly, there is a lot of paranormal and UFO activity going on in the Central Coast area of California. And to help us learn more and possibly answer some of these questions today is Jeff Krause, the MUFON State Section Director of California's Tri-County area, as well as being one of MUFON's field investigators. Welcome to the cafe, Jeff.
Thanks for having me on, Eric.
Oh, I'm just super thrilled to have you here. I saw you speak at the Northern California MUFON meeting that they had that was actually hosted by one of our cafe's friends, Ruben Uriarte. And wow, you just bowled me over. I mean, you have some amazing, amazing information. But yeah, so how did you get involved with chasing UFOs and this paranormal activity and
That's
stuff?
That's a good question. Well, you know, nothing will get interest like having an actual experience yourself.
Okay.
On the way to the World's Fair back in the early 60s, New York World's Fair, something happened.
Okay.
Not quite sure yet what that was. I'm still investigating what happened to that, so I don't talk about it a lot. I know it was some kind of an event, and eventually that will be uncovered. But it started me on the road to understanding that there was something else going on, even at that early age.
Wow.
And of course, on the way there, I had relatives in Roswell, New Mexico, which is where we stopped right after that.
So, no, you didn't tell me that.
Well, you know,
we could have made a whole different show about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody in our audience has ever heard of Roswell or anything. But
no, it's one of those little out-of-the-way birds there in New Mexico. Yeah. Now, my uncle actually was on the Artesia or on the Roswell Fire Department before he opened up his own fire equipment business in Artesia there.
Oh my gosh.
So, all growing up through the 60s, of course, I heard stories of Roswell because all the locals pretty much knew what was going on. Sure. Even though throughout the rest of the country you wouldn't hear a word about it. And back in the 60s, those were the things you did not talk about at all.
Right.
And nobody was comfortable talking about the subject of UFOs.
See, yeah, you didn't talk about UFOs and you didn't talk about cancer, right?
Absolutely. In fact, cancer was probably preferable to UFOs at the time, I'm sure. But a lot of the locals in the area were quite comfortable talking about it, and they knew what happened. And it was actually one of the first times when it occurred to me that just possibly we weren't getting the truth from the government.
Oh.
Now, later in life, that's a big shocker to a lot of people, I know.
I'm trying to keep a straight face.
Yeah, I'm here all week. Please try the meatloaf.
Oh, I heard the meatloaf's pretty good.
It is. It's excellent at the NSA Cafeteria anyway.
Oh, God, don't get us started on the NSA.
Oh, believe me, I'm gonna.
Could you imagine their cafeteria, though?
Well,
yeah, let's not even get.
Yeah,
it's top secret. We can't talk about
it. Even their food is classified, of course. But later in life, around the age of 19, I lived in a recording studio down in the valley, San Gabriel Valley in Azusa.
Okay.
And one night, coming back from the market across the street, my girlfriend and I just happened to look up, and there was about a mile-long craft overhead.
Whoa.
Doing maybe 20 miles an hour, very slow. And, you know, we weren't alone seeing it. There was a good couple hundred other people milling around the parking lot of Market Basket. It was early in the evening, a summer night, so there was a lot of people out. And you could hear the whoops, whistles, and catcalls. Everyone saw it coasting over.
Oh.
And it's the kind of thing where you felt elated. You know, this is the evidence that everyone's been waiting for.
Yeah.
Thoroughly believing that the next day you're going to hear it on NBC News. It's going to be in the papers all over the LA Times and the San Gabriel Valley Tribune. You're going to hear something.
Yeah, yeah.
The next day I heard absolutely nothing. It was not covered on any stations. Even KMET and KLOS, the rock and roll stations, not a thing was said by it. Now, again, the 70s, people didn't talk about it that much, but I do know how many people were there that saw it and their reaction to it. And it wasn't one of fear, it wasn't one of panic.
Right.
They didn't lose control. Everyone seemed kind of happy to see it, and like it was affirmation to them that this is really something going on.
Now, since it was the 70s, there weren't a bunch of people doing marijuana.
I'm sure there were, and it was a recording studio right across the street, so there was probably a cloud there of it. Had absolutely nothing to do with it, no.
Oh, okay.
This was a very real, solid craft.
Okay.
The nearest I compared to...
You weren't hallucinating?
Oh, not at all.
Oh,
no,
okay.
not at all, not at all. I didn't drink or do any of that. You know, I'm totally...
Straight and narrow.
Straight and narrow. My girlfriend at the time, too, saw it, and we were both, you know, so ecstatic at it and seeing it. And you think for sure the next day that you're going to hear something, and when you don't, it makes you angry.
Yeah,
and you start thinking that, you know, everything you heard before that was brushed off, that there had to have been more substance to it.
Right.
So from that point on, I started investigating UFO reports seriously.
So you've been investigating since the 60s or 70s?
I haven't really been investigating since the 60s, no.
Okay.
I've been reading up and studying and believers since the 60s.
Okay.
Didn't actually start investigating until the late 70s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But, you know, that's still a pretty good chunk of my life that I've been doing this. Uncovered some really fascinating stories. Probably the closest one that hit home for me would have been what you've heard of as the Battle of Los Angeles. My dad was stationed in the Navy at the time, and to even bring this subject up with him many years later would trigger such an emotional response in the man that he'd almost break out in tears. And this is someone that was not emotional on any level whatsoever.
Right, right.
So to ask him, well, you know, what do you think of the possibilities that it's UFOs or could have been something we don't understand? And never in my life did I ever see him so adamant and angry and forceful in saying that, no, there's nothing to this, this does not exist. Later, come to find out, there's a possible connection between my dad and OSI. My dad put in 40 years with Pacific Telephone, Office of Strategic Intelligence.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody...
Which is the precursor to CIA.
Oh, okay.
It started out with the Navy.
Okay.
Well, after my dad's passing, I started going through the belongings and papers and things and found little things like spy cameras, which you can find in the CIA museum. They have a picture of the same exact thing.
Oh.
Different little stashes of, you know, coins, foreign currency, weird things that, you know,
You didn't expect your dad
you
to
don't
have.
see. And things started clicking together on why he would be so adamant against the whole theory of UFOs. And it wasn't until I talked to my mom years later, and it was around about the time that the movie Battle of Los Angeles was coming out. And I started mentioning, you know, well, what about when that happened and what was Dad doing and everything? She, do not ever bring that up. Your dad is still upset about that.
Wow.
So something happened, obviously. Now, I don't know, it's not been actually documented, but if you read some of the Navy reports, there's teletype reports that a craft went down, was shot down off the coast of Santa Monica, and another one over the San Gabriel Mountains.
And that's just a real brief summary of that movie and the event known as Battle of Los Angeles.
The movie has absolutely nothing to do with the real event, except other than the title. To tell you the truth, the real event was probably a little bit scarier.
Well, I would think so. Shooting down alien craft and not knowing what they're, you know, I mean, why would you engage an enemy that you may not know what they could possibly do? They could have maybe just vaporized LA, say, you're shooting at us?
You got to think, one little bzz coming back could have really changed everything.
Yeah,
and we're probably pretty lucky that we did not ever start an interstellar war.
The Inland Empire may have been the coastal region.
Well, you know, there's many instances of our military attempting to shoot at UFOs or catch UFOs.
Now, that was based on military intelligence, correct?
Well, that's a...
Sorry for the innuendo. I'm probably going to get killed for that one.
Well, I have a lot of military friends, so, you know, I'm sure they understand where we're coming from on
my
this
dad's
one.
military. And,
and God bless every single one of them. Thank you for your service.
Yes,
However,
absolutely.
it is a fact that things are being covered up, and there is a truth embargo when it comes to UFOs, and especially when it comes to the military interaction with UFOs.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people that also theorize that it's not necessarily our normal U.S. military that's doing this. It's more of like a black op type, you know, separate sort of, that's not necessarily connected.
The way security works is compartmentalization. If you do not have a need to know, you're not told.
Right.
Now, secrets are kept for a very good reason.
Yeah.
Because you don't want your enemies having the information.
Right.
Now, you can think of many reasons why UFOs might be secret.
Yeah.
It might be something that you don't want your enemy to have. The first biggest reason that comes to my mind is the energy systems involved in the propulsion of the craft.
Yeah.
Now, if you're talking zero-point energy, which it's theorized a lot of these craft operate on, you're talking something way more potent than the hydrogen bomb, which is why it's classified 2 levels above the hydrogen bomb.
Wow.
This is something you do not want anybody else learning about, having any information of, because whoever has the secret to zero-point energy, they're going to have global control.
Now,
That's your ultimate power right there.
Speaking of UFOs and zero-point energy and alien technology and such, I think we should probably get into some of the slides that we brought with, or you brought with us. And actually, I'd like to start with the first one, since I mentioned it during the open about the crop circles. So whenever
certainly.
they get a chance, they can bring up slide number 7 and we can talk about that. Because that event that you were the first field investigator on, okay, they have it up, great. As I remember, you were the first MUFON field investigator or first field investigator from any organization to actually get out there.
Correct.
And investigate this, and it actually got quite a bit of national recognition, and I believe you had a lot of interaction with Linda Moulton Howe. And
right. It's the first thing that Linda and I ever talked about.
And yeah, it's quite a phenomenal, as they could see on the screen when it was up, that quite an intricate. And, you know, there are people theorizing, you know, what is it? Is it planets circling around, or is it, you know, the aliens trying to send us a coded message? So rather than keep people in suspense, Jeff, what happened after, you know, real quickly, what happened with that?
Well, I'll give you the brief story here. Just before New Year's 2013, a crop circle appeared in Chular, California. The dimensions of it, it's about 320-foot wide circle, so it's no small feat. And very intricate design, sharp edges, as you can see from the picture. It was very well laid out. It all of a sudden appeared in the field, and I caught it on the news. I just happened to be waking up in the morning and walked by the TV and saw a picture of it. Or excuse me, it was the evening news. I walked by a picture of it on the evening news and saw it and went, what's this? And saw it was in Chular, not too far from where I live in San Luis Obispo. So as soon as I saw that, I said, okay, I got to find out where this is, and I'm going to get there first thing in the morning. Yeah. So I Googled it and got rough directions, and I do mean very rough directions. And about 4 the next morning, I got my neighbor across the street who speaks very good Spanish, because I knew, you know, if I run into something up there, I'm going to be lost. So we piled in the car and headed straight up there. I didn't ask for any directions. I'm going to get on Chular Canyon Road, and we'll head out that way, and I'll ask someone along the way and figure out where it is. Someone's got to know.
Right.
So we drove straight there, and I'm going down Chular Canyon Road, and I just happened to see a white truck sitting along the fence there. And so I stopped and got out, and it was a security guard. And I said, hey, do you happen to know where this crop circle is everyone's talking about? Oh, you're at it. This is it right here. Oh, okay. Well.
Too bad I guess it's lucky for you the security guard didn't say, oh yeah, it's you go down that way about a couple of miles and make a left and then to the right.
He could have done that and I'd have okey doked it, because you really couldn't have seen anything from the field or from the street right there. All you could see is just barely any indentations. Yeah. It wasn't until I actually got up on the running board so that I could start to see the design. And I'm sure you saw the pictures I showed during that presentation. The design was pretty intricate.
Yes.
Interestingly, I got the security guard to take my iPad in with the magnetometer app and get some readings for me. And it had higher readings than the background levels around outside the design.
So that's key right there.
That is a key point.
Yeah.
He also brought me back some samples that were bent over the crop, and they showed the elongated cell structure common with verified real crop circles. And interestingly enough, Sean Randall, after that field was plowed, also got some samples and brought them back, and we compared them that night, and they were just the same.
Okay.
Okay. So those readings were taken. I interviewed a bunch of people in the neighborhood. Nobody saw anything. Talked to farmhands in the area. For a week at least before that, nobody saw anything around there. Right. The Saturday before it made the news, some of the neighbors saw a dark van out there early in the morning before sunrise, and maybe 10, 12 people, they said, milling around in the field with what looked like instruments and measuring stuff. And that was it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we figured, well, maybe that was an agency that first got there and they're taking readings or investigating it, whatever. And more information came out on this. We started finding out more interesting patterns in there, like the 192 pattern, the Braille symbol that kept repeating the 192. And right there, it kind of got to be a flag when we saw Braille. A human communication like that is always a warning sign.
Yeah.
But then when NVIDIA came out with their disclaimer saying that they made the crop circle and they produced a video which appeared to show people in the field making the design.
In fact, I think it was NVIDIA CEO that did like a big to-do press release on New Year's Day or something?
Well, it was actually about 5th or 6th of January. It was when they had the release of their new chip, which looked a lot like the design in the crop circle.
Yeah. A video
However,
chip.
When I gave that talk in San Jose, I don't know if you remember, but there was a gentleman in the back row that said, well, wait a minute, I took Geiger counter readings there, and I got readings on my Geiger counter of radiation.
Yes.
So here's two schools of thought. NVIDIA made it, but yet I got magnetometer readings and Geiger counter readings, and we have samples that look just like the samples from crop circles.
And it's like NVIDIA could have maybe sprinkled something out there, but why would they do that? I mean, if it's just a promotion or
it's the grandest way to kick off that chip, wasn't it? Look at all the publicity it got.
Yeah, but I mean, putting the stuff for your magnetometer, though.
I think it could have been a design already made.
Yeah.
They came in real quick and covered it up and sprinkled in a little bit of that stuff in the center.
Gets interesting.
And used it to their advantage to market their chip.
Right.
That is the only way that I can think of that would explain the higher magnetometer readings and Geiger counter readings.
Well, and
you're not going to get it from electric running underneath the field, which they plow a field. They're not going to be running conduits and telephone lines and anything under there anyway.
And that guy came out, was it about a full week or so later after it first showed up?
Right, and he didn't even have the dimensions right.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something going on there. But you know, we can go on and on. I know people can learn more about that from your website.
That puppy to bed.
You brought a lot of information, and I know unfortunately, we only do a half-hour show, so we need to make sure so people can learn, and we'll give your website information a little bit later.
Okay.
But you brought some other slides with you, and if we bring up the slide 0, which kind of shows I think it's an NSA thing or something, or what was that? You also have the actual copies here in your hand.
Right. Actually, the slide 0, is that up there now?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's from the Defense Intelligence Agency response to my FOIA request. The first right here in this paragraph where they say, we will be unable to respond to your request within the FOIA's 20-day statutory time period due to unusual circumstances. Now, right there, you have to think, what could be an unusual circumstance when someone sends in a FOIA request to them?
And FOIA stands for
Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the only unusual circumstance that comes to mind for me is I happen to know the Project Blue Book file number, the date the photo was taken, the actual location of the photo, and how many pages were in the Project Blue Book file. That's probably pretty unusual for them to get that. But it gets better. Further in the paragraph here, these unusual circumstances could be A, the need to search for and collect the records from a facility, and they're probably scattered all over into one file cabinet. Potential volume of records responsive to your request. Yeah, we know those are 12 pages. That's probably a lot to put together there. But here's the best part. the need for consultation with one or more other agencies which have substantial interest in either the determination or the subject matter of the records. In other words, we have to get together with our cronies and figure out how we're going to handle this, because you caught us with our fingers in the cookie jar.
Right. Now, just so people don't think we're getting too far putting the cart in front of the horse here, let's bring up slide 1 so they can actually see the image that you're or is it not slide 1?
No, slide
I
4
apologize.
would be the best one.
Okay, bring up slide 4 then, and we'll go ahead and
Beautiful.
That one. Go ahead and give us a brief summary on, because this is what sparks.
This is what started the whole thing. Actually, it wasn't even the photo from Foreign Technology Division. When I originally found this case, it was a black and white yellowed photo, just like that photo, but without the wonderful frame around it. And I ended up finding, it said San Luis Obispo, California, July 7th, 1967. And that's it. Could never find any other information, not the photographer, circumstances, or anything. Yet I found the photo coming up again in over 200 different websites. Finally, I found through Fold 3 a copy of the photo, and lo and behold, it came from Foreign Technology Division.
And as you can see in that photo, and we didn't circle it with a red circle, so I apologize, but it's kind of a little bit up from the center of the screen there. You can see kind of a UFO-looking object, and that's what
disc.
caught Jeff's eye.
Absolutely. And you know, things don't go to the Foreign Technology desk because it's a picture of a pretty shiny disc.
Right.
There's got to be something happening. They can't backward engineer anything from a picture.
Right.
So there has to be more to this story. So digging into it, I went through the Fold 3 files, which is where there's a lot of the archives from Project Blue Book records.
Yeah.
Which, just in case anybody doesn't know, Project Blue Book was the Air Force's sham public display of the investigation of UFOs, not the real deal. Any good cases went to the AFOSI, which is the Air Force Office of Strategic Intelligence. None of the really good cases are in Project Blue Book,
right?
Because they contained sensitive information.
Sure.
What's that phrase? Oh yeah, national security interests.
Now, just real quickly, just so people know, I want them to go ahead and bring up your website, because we are, believe it or not, the half hour is almost over. Yeah, I told you it would go by real fast. So your website's up there. Go ahead and just tell them what they can expect to find on there. It's MUFON-TriCounty.com.
MUFON-TriCounty.com.
Yeah.
We have our grand kickoff coming up November 2nd in Los Osos, California. Mike Barra from Ancient Aliens is going to be our guest speaker down there.
I'll actually be attending.
Fantastic. I sure hope so. I hope everybody can make it there. It's going to be a great kickoff event for MUFON Tri-County. We found that there is a definite need for this in the central coast of California.
Clearly, yeah.
No one wants to drive all the way to LA or San Francisco when they can go right there to San Luis Obispo, or where we're going to actually have the meeting for now in Los Osos, which is right next door. And I'm expecting a very good turnout for it, and a lot of support for the slow UFO.
Yeah, the slow. San Luis Obispo UFO.
That's it.
Yeah, okay. So let's get back into this since we got a couple more minutes, and make sure you hit on the highlights of what's important.
Right. Well, the National Security Agency, in their response, I caught them in a lie. I didn't notice this until I've had this response for a couple months, and I read it and read it and read it and read it, and it just went click this morning when I was going over it, that they lied right here.
An exclusive for us, okay.
This is, you're the first to hear this.
Okay.
Right here, the NSA says, please be advised that UFOs, extraterrestrials, and paranormal activities do not relate to NSA mission.
Okay.
Really? So you could just fly anything into our airspace and it's not a matter of national security. Lie.
Oh, that is interesting, yeah.
Secondly, right here, since the topic of your request does not fall within NSA's purview, and since we have identified where you can obtain any UFO records, which are publicly available on our webpage, we consider your request to be satisfied, and your request is being closed at this time. How can the National Security Agency say that something they can't identify flying into our airspace is not in their purview?
Exactly.
I'm not buying it.
Right, yeah.
Especially when we have so many documents, thank you to the Freedom of Information Act,
Right.
from the NSA on the subject of UFOs, which they've been questioned on beforehand, they lied about, and then they ended up having to cough them out.
Yes.
So why is it okay for them to lie and not follow through with the spirit of the FOIA law?
Right, right, yeah.
Ah.
And this all started from the one slide we were showing.
Right.
And it led into...
well, my friend Robert Morningstar actually enhanced the photos for me because we wanted to get a better shot of the UFO and see if maybe there was something else in the picture.
Yes.
Well, when he enhanced the photo for me right after the Secret Space Program Conference, we were pretty much shocked. Which slide would show it the best? I would have to say probably if you go to slide 5, would show it the enhancement the best.
Okay.
And then you can see a little bit better, you can see the actual craft here. But if you look kind of down and to the left from that craft, what looks like a hair on the picture, I took all along as just being a hair that made it onto the photo, because a lot of times back in the old days when they would make photos out of the negatives, that would happen. There'd be a fiber in the negative or something, and it would get transferred with the picture.
We got about 30 seconds.
When he brought that out, it ended up that it's not a hair, it's actually a tube, like the tube-type entities that were found in Yuri Gagarin's photos over Vladivostok, Russia.
Wow.
Also, Story Musgrave's STS-61 video shows the same tube-type entity going along below the space shuttle while he's filming it.
On that note, Jeff, I'm going to have you wrap it up because I have to wrap it up. And thank you very much for stopping by the cafe. Everybody, thank you very much for stopping by the cafe again. I really hope you were intrigued by Jeff's information, and I certainly hope that you get to his website to look and learn more and see all the great information that he has. You can always find links to Jeff and his website at cosmiccafeshow.com, cosmiccafeshow.com. And I would definitely like to thank the Media Center for making this possible and all the fantastic volunteers that actually work here on the show and help make this show a reality. And more importantly, I'd also like to thank the great TV stations all over the nation that are now carrying this show and the potentials of millions of people that are now watching the show. Please feel free to find us on the Facebook pages and other social media. And with that, I'll say goodbye.